Okay, you ready? Oliver was walking near the river in the evening when a group of people dressed in black caught him. All of them were wearing masks. Their leader offered Oliver three options. They could throw the guy into the sea with hungry piranhas, he could choose to end up in the ocean swarming with sharks, or he could opt for a river with hippos. What should Oliver choose to survive? Piranhas only live in fresh water. The guy should pick the sea with the piranhas. An expedition set up camp in the middle of a desert. They were planning to spend several days in that place. But when they woke up, their truck had disappeared. Luckily, they had enough food to last a week, but no power and little water. But there was more to come. 3 days later, one of the team members disappeared. The leader of the expedition questioned the remaining people. Michael said he had been wandering around, trying to find water. Emily said she had been playing games on her smartphone. Evelyn claimed they had been sleeping all day long to save energy. And Henry said he had been preparing his research paper in his tent. Now, who's lying? Emily. In 3 days, her phone would have already run out of battery. There are 100 books on a shelf. To count off 10 of them, you'll need 10 seconds. How much time you'll spend counting off 70 books? It will take you 30 seconds. You'll need this time to count off 30 books, and the remaining ones will add up to 70. Sophia's sister, Chloe, visited her on Saturday. The women had a meal and talked about their lives. Chloe had been promoted. Her husband had recently presented her a diamond ring, and they were going to have a vacation in Hawaii. Chloe didn't have such amazing news. She only listened to her sister and complained about life. Right after lunch, Chloe felt unwell. She paled and lost consciousness. Sophia called an ambulance. They rushed Chloe to a hospital and hardly had enough time to save her life. It turned out the woman had been poisoned. The police came to Sophia to ask her a couple of questions. She was shocked. "We ate the same food. I cooked chicken and made a vegetable salad. Nothing exotic." After examining the food, the police officers arrested Sophia for trying to poison her sister. But how did she do it? The poison was in the bottle with the salad dressing. Chloe added some vinaigrette to her dish, while Sophia didn't touch the bottle. The moral? Stop complaining so much. A small cafe in Boston is called 9 Lanterns, but there are only 7 lanterns hanging outside. The owner knows about this mistake and can easily correct it, but he doesn't. Why? When the wind took away 2 lanterns some time ago, the man wanted to replace them. But before he could do it, he noticed that more people started to come into his cafe. They told him 2 lanterns were missing, and then stayed to drink coffee. Jackson came to visit his friend Aiden, who he hadn't seen in ages. They had a great time, gossiping and drinking tea. But Jackson had completely forgotten Aiden had one quirk. He loved making up riddles and never let anyone leave his house without cracking 1 or 2 of his newest ones. This time, his question was, "What do you swallow that can swallow you?" Can you help Jackson get home? Hey, it's already late. The answer is water. Jackson was smart enough to know he won't be able to leave Aiden's house after just 1 riddle. True to his expectations, another riddle was waiting for him. What is lower with a head on top than without it? Jackson took his sweet time, but eventually he realized the right answer was a pillow. Could he go home now? Apparently not yet, but Aiden promised it would be the last riddle for the evening. He told his friend, Hannah's birthday is on January 23rd, but she always celebrates it in the summer. Why? Luckily, Jackson had just returned from his trip to Australia. He immediately realized that Hannah lived in the southern hemisphere. There, January is the hottest month of the year. Students knew they would have an exam on Friday, but their strict professor didn't tell them the exact time. When one guy gathered enough courage to ask about it, he got a weird reply. If 11 plus 2 equals 1, 10 plus 6 equals 4. If you manage to figure out the answer, you won't miss the exam. Do you know when the students should meet with their professor? At 4 p.m. 11 o'clock plus 2 hours is 1 p.m. Then 10 o'clock and 6 hours is 4 p.m. James called his wife Mia and told her he would be at home by 8 o'clock. They didn't plan anything special for that evening, but when he arrived at 2 minutes past 8, the woman was furious. Why was she so angry? Mia thought her husband would come home by 8 p.m., but he appeared at 8:02 a.m. the next morning. Uh-oh. Look at these two ladies. They both seem to be filthy rich, but only one of them actually is. Can you figure out who's fake rich? It's the girl on the left. She's taking a photo with a luxury car in the background. But there's someone in the driver's seat, and this person looks rather shocked. One elderly man could only use a public telephone to make his calls. Once the phone stopped working, the man informed the phone company. He waited and waited, but no one came to fix the phone. Several days later, the man visited the company again and said something. The day after, the phone was working again. What did the man say? He said people use the phone to make calls without paying. Look at this picture attentively. What's wrong with it? The pitcher the woman is holding is empty. Then where's the milk coming from? Mark has always been jealous of his friend Liam's achievements. This week, they're both taking part in a battle of wits. Mark decides to do everything possible to win this time. And the first task is to guess the word. It has 7 letters and it is very heavy. But if Mark takes away 2 letters, he'll get 8. If he takes away 1 letter, he'll get 80. What word is it? The first riddle is a success. Mark finds the right word. It's weighty. The next question is even trickier. A man went around the world in a ship, and still he was always inside of land. How is it possible? It doesn't take Mark long to figure out the man was in a spaceship orbiting Earth. The next thing Mark knows, he's locked in a room. Wow. There are 4 doors there. He's entered through one of them, and he can't use it again. The first door leads to the room with high-voltage wires hanging above the wet floor. Behind the second door, there's a water-filled room swarming with piranhas. And the third door hides a room where acid, flesh-melting rain is falling from the ceiling. Which door is more or less safe to enter? Mark Mark opted for the first door and didn't regret it. It was safe because he didn't let his body come into contact with the wires and the wet floor at the same time. It turned out the next task was the last one in this competition. Mark was looking forward to finding out the winner, but first he had to do some brain work. The world's tallest tower is finally finished. It took 5 years to build it. Every next year, the construction doubled in height. How many years did it take the tower to reach half its current height? "4 years. If the tower grew twice taller every year, it had to be half of its final height a year before it was completed. And if you're wondering about the results of the competition, it ended in a tie. Duh. Luna has 2 friends, Jack and Owen. On her birthday, the girl wants to go to the movies with the guys, but they don't know each other and Luna's worried they might feel uncomfortable. But there's also another problem. She spent way too much money this month. But if she invites the guys, she's going to pay. Now, she's trying to understand what is cheaper, to invite both guys at the same time or go to the movies with each of them in turn. Can you help Luna? It'll cost the girl less to invite her 2 friends at the same time. This way, she'll only have to buy 3 tickets. If she goes with each of them, she'll pay for 4 tickets. It was a sunny summer day without a single cloud in the sky. The ship was in the harbor. There were many people on the shore. They gathered there to look at the vessel. Suddenly, the ship started to sink. There was nothing wrong with it, and all of its systems were functioning correctly. The weather was fine and the sea was calm. But the ship still disappeared in the blink of an eye. What happened? Well, nothing unexpected. Submarines are supposed to travel underwater. Wow! While working late at night in a top-secret laboratory, Michael finally managed to create the DNA of a hybrid monstrous creature. After all that hard work, he decided to grab a quick coffee and donut as a little reward. But he came back and saw that the specimen had disappeared from the incubator. Michael lined up Ryan, Jeff, and Laura and confronted them. Who took an important top-secret piece of research I was working on? Ryan said he'd been busy doing some additional research on a separate project and had no idea what was going on. Jeff said he hadn't touched the hybrid creature and had been in the archives digging through some files he needed. And Laura said she'd been in the bathroom the whole time. So, who took the specimen? Michael never mentioned that he was dealing with a hybrid monstrous creature. Jeff just let himself get caught. Better think smart next time. Anne absolutely loathes winter, but just like anyone else, she has to go out and do stuff. She had just moved to a snowy city for work and experiences some of the coldest winters. But she managed to make it to the mall to do some quick shopping through a huge blizzard. When she came back to her parked car, she discovered that someone broke into it and took her belongings. When the police lined up the 3 suspects, they each gave their stories. Francesca said she had been polishing her car outside and didn't know anything. Ned said he'd been shopping for clothes, and Earl said he'd been sitting in a cafe on the upper floor of the mall. The police arrested the suspect. Who was it? Francesca. She was polishing her car outside in the middle of a blizzard? That's not only illogical, but not safe either. She just gave herself away. You wake up and find yourself trapped in a room with 4 doors in front of you. You don't have enough time to choose which door leads to freedom. You hear a monster coming, so you check out the doors quickly. The leftmost door has a sign on it saying, "Take the door on the right to break free." The second door also has a sign saying it's the right door. The third door has a sign, freedom is just right in front of you. And the last door has a sign, don't trust the signs. Which door should you choose? The last door. It says not to trust the signs, but it doesn't mean that they're lying. The first door says to take the door on the right. Not necessarily the last door on the right, but just the one on the right. The second one says it's the right door. Not the correct door, but the right door, as in the door on the right. The third door says freedom is just right in front of you. That just doesn't make any sense, does it? So it's the last door on the right that leads to freedom. Mason was extremely happy when he got the news that his sister Jane was coming to town. He had just started a new job and couldn't wait to host her for the first time. She was only able to see some nice pictures of the places he visited, including where he lived. When he picked her up from the airport, he noticed something slightly off about her. She was robotic with her responses and seemed stiff with her movements. She wouldn't eat and only insisted that she wanted to rest up. Strange. Had he been watching too much sci-fi? After a while, Mason hears a knock on the door, and to his surprise, it's Jane. But I thought… Jane tells him that the Jane in his apartment is an imposter. When the Jane in the bedroom goes out and sees the other Jane sitting on the couch, they're both in shock. They both try to convince Mason that they're the real Jane. But who will Mason believe? It's pretty normal to come back from a trip pretty tired and wanting to rest. But how did the second Jane know where Mason lived without prior knowledge? And she didn't even break a sweat running up to the apartment. On a nice day, Vivian, who lived in a town on the seashore, decided to go for a hike alone. But after hours of trekking, she ended up on a section of the forest she wasn't familiar with. Before her were three paths. One path had bare footprints leading away. Another had human shoe prints, and the third was right by the river. Which one should Vivian take to find her way? The river path. Since she lives in a coastal town, the river mouth most likely ends up in the sea. That way, she could figure out where she is. Melissa is sharing a train car with three other people. It's a very hot day and the air conditioner doesn't even work. James starts complaining and only calms down after opening the window. Melissa lays down her red silk scarf her grandmother gave her next to her. Judith compliments it. Robert, a senior, mentions that he forgot to bring a gift for his wife who will pick him up from the train station. James has a crush on Judith. After a while, Melissa goes to the bathroom and comes back to find the scarf missing. Who was the one who took it? None of them. It was a hot day and James opened the window. The wind sent the scarf flying right out of it. Some zombies have Diego trapped in a room. They're surrounding him. He's stuck and can't escape. Their arms are breaking in and reaching for him. When Diego looks around, he realizes that he's in a small newspaper stand with magazines and pocketbooks. And looking around him more attentively, he finds a roll of tape nearby. How can he avoid those nasty bites? The only way for Diego to escape will be to tape those magazines around crucial parts of his body where they can't lay his teeth on him. It'll be light enough for him to run away from the zombies without getting hurt. Plus, he'll have plenty of reading material for the road. Evan got lost in a forest, and just his luck, it was snowing. The only thing the police searching for him found were 4 parallel lines leading into the forest. Something doesn't seem right, they thought, and took several people into questioning. Nick said he had been at the store buying some groceries. Vanessa said she had been babysitting. Christina had been at work the whole time. After hearing the stories, they arrested Nick. Why? Nick was in a wheelchair. The 4 parallel lines were left by Nick rolling into the forest and back out. It's the beginning of a new school year, and Dave started a new job as a computer studies teacher at a local high school. Another fellow teacher, Roy, didn't really welcome him because he wanted that position. But at the end of the day, there was a security breach which leaked out a lot of important information about the school. When the police questioned everyone, including Roy and Dave, they each gave their stories. Dave said, "I was checking exam papers and was at the staff room the whole time." Roy said, "I was preparing homework for my classes when everything happened." Who should the police arrest? Who was lying? Dave. There wouldn't be any exams on the first day of school. Gareth is in a pickle. He's at the police station looking at the lined-up suspects, one of whom stole Beth's bag while she was having a picnic in the park. He observes them. Beth describes the culprit as someone big, no hair, and wearing a black jacket. All the men lined up matched the description. Gareth looks at each of them, and they all have one distinct trait that makes them stand out from each other. Suspect number 1 has a beard. Number 2 is wearing shorts. And number 3 is wearing glasses. Gareth knows immediately who to arrest. Who is it? Suspect number 1 has dirt all over his boots. The rest are all clean. He ran through the mud tracks while Beth was having a picnic. So Mia wanted to go to the party her classmate was throwing, but her father didn't let her. Mia thought for a while and remembered her grandparents had just moved to their new one-story country house. She asked her dad if she could visit them at the weekend, and the man agreed. But Mia went to the party instead. When she got back home after the weekend, her father asked her if she had had a good time. Mia replied she helped in the garden a little and spent the rest of the day upstairs. Her father immediately knew she was lying. How? Mia said she'd been upstairs, but her grandparents' house is a one-story cottage. Liar, liar, pants on fire. 11 plus 3 equals 2. 10 plus 5 equals 3. Now how is that possible? It makes sense when we talk about time. 11 o'clock plus 3 hours is 2 o'clock. 10 o'clock plus 5 hours is 3 o'clock. One king wants to find out which of his 3 sons is the smartest. He takes 3 chests and puts his crown in one of them. On each chest there's a statement, but only one of these statements is true. The crown is in this chest. The crown isn't in this chest. The crown isn't in chest number 1. Each person can only open one chest. The son who figures out where the crown is will be the next king. But can you solve this riddle? If the first statement is true, the other 2 must be false. It's not so because the second statement turns out to be correct. So this assumption's wrong. If the second statement is true, the crown isn't in the first chest. It's not in the second chest either. Then it must be in the third one. But this makes the third statement correct, although it shouldn't be. If the third statement is true, the first one's wrong and there's no crown in the first chest. The second statement's also wrong. Now there are no contradictions. The crown's in the second chest. Here's a sequence of letters. Which letter should you add? The missing letter is F. If you put it at the end, you'll get E. James and Taylor were best friends in elementary school. Unfortunately, when the children were 10, James and his parents moved to another state. The friends lost contact. 15 years later, James and Taylor accidentally bumped into each other in a cafe. It was their first meeting since school. They recognized each other and started talking. It turned out Taylor was already married and had a daughter. "Wow," said James, "does she look like her dad?" "Oh no," Taylor said, "the girl's a mini version of her mother." "Ah, so she must be a blonde with blue eyes." This time, James was right. How did he understand that? Taylor's a girl. She's the mother, and James only needed to describe her. You're outside a room with 3 switches in the off position. Your task is to find out which one turns on the light in the room. You can flip as many switches as you want, but you can walk into the room and check if the light's on only once. How can you understand which switch controls the light bulb? Turn on 2 random switches and wait for a couple of minutes. Then, turn one of them off and walk into the room. If the light's on, the switch connected to the bulb is the one you left in the on position. If the room's dark, touch the light bulb. If it's hot, then the controlling switch is the one you just turned off. If the light bulb is cold, the correct switch is the only one you haven't touched. Esme got lost in the forest. She was wandering around for the whole day. Finally, at dusk, she saw a spooky house. A witch lived there. The girl had nowhere else to go, so she entered the house and asked for help. The witch said if Esme solved her riddle, she'd be free to leave in the morning. Here's how the riddle went. 17J, 70M, 96A, 162J, 256S, 354, what's the missing letter? The 17th day of the year is in January. The 70th day of the year is in March. The 96th is in April. The 162nd in June. And the day 256 is in September. Day 354 is in December. The missing letter is D. A young girl got her first job as a maid in a rich lady's house. Once, when she was tidying up, she noticed a very expensive collection of books. She made a break to look through one of them and then returned it to the shelf. The girl kept working until the very evening. No one else was at home. After finishing her work, the maid returned to the shelf and discovered that the 6th book was missing. But she clearly remembered that the book had been there before. It was the one she had been looking through. When the lady returned, the girl confessed she'd lost the book. But the woman only laughed and said everything was fine. Nothing was missing. How come? The collection had 8 books. The 9th book was actually the 6th one. The girl accidentally put it upside down. Right before Christmas, the police got information that a famous thief named Alfonso had left Chile. He boarded the plane to Los Angeles. The only thing the detectives knew about the man was that he had a beard. At the airport, the police officers met a group of people. They had just arrived from different countries. The detectives noticed 4 men with beards and interrogated them. The first one said he'd come from London. The second told the police he arrived from Chile, but his name was Cristiano. The third man answered he'd come from Sweden, and the fourth one was also from London. The police didn't even need to check their plane tickets to spot the criminal. How did they know? It's Christmas time, but the man who supposedly came from Sweden is dressed too lightly for that climate. He must have arrived from Chile, where it's summer. A road accident happened on a foggy day. 2 drivers were taken to a hospital. Each of them had a concussion. Interestingly, their cars didn't even have a scratch. What happened? The drivers were going in opposite directions. It was foggy, so they stuck their heads out of the window. They didn't notice each other and hit their heads. Ow! Samantha was born on January 27th. For the first 20 years of her life, she celebrated her birthday in the winter. But starting with her 21st birthday, she began celebrating it in the summer. Why? She moved to the southern hemisphere, where it's summer in January. 2 sisters, Ava and Nicole, are very honest girls. They always tell the truth, except for one day a year. On their birthdays, they always lie. Today is September 17th, and you ask them when their birthdays are. Ava says hers was yesterday, and Nicole says her birthday is tomorrow. The next day, you ask them again, and they say the exact same thing. Can you guess when their birthdays are? They can't have 2 birthdays. It means that one day one of them lied, and the next day it was the other's turn. Since Ava mentioned yesterday, her birthday must come first. So Ava's birthday is on September 17th, and Nicole's on September 18th. Bethany, Tommy, Eliza, and James spent the whole day at home alone. Their mother didn't let them enter her room. When she came back in the evening, she wanted to eat her chocolate bar, but it was gone. She went downstairs and asked the kids who had eaten her treat. Bethany said she'd been doing her algebra homework the whole day and hadn't eaten anything at all. Tommy replied he had been playing football outside. Eliza said she didn't even know where their mom kept chocolate. And James simply claimed it hadn't been him. Their mom knew immediately who had taken her chocolate. How did she figure it out? It was Eliza. The mother never mentioned what kind of treat was missing, but Eliza somehow knew it was chocolate. The father of identical quadruplets, Aurora, Belle, Chloe, and Dana, called the teacher and asked her to let Dana leave earlier. She had a doctor's appointment. The teacher couldn't tell the girls apart. To have some fun, the quadruplets refused to confess who was who, but gave their teacher a hint. Chloe is somewhere in the middle. Dana is to the left of Belle and to the right of Aurora. Aurora is right next to Dana. How can the teacher identify the girls? Chloe is somewhere in the middle, and since Dana has someone on both sides of her, she must be in the middle too. If Chloe was the second, Dana would be the third. Then Dana would be to the left of Belle, and Belle would be the fourth. Then Aurora must be the first. But it doesn't work, because Aurora and Dana have to be next to each other. If we switch Chloe and Dana, Dana will be right next to Aurora, but still to the left of Belle. So the right order is Aurora, Dana, Chloe, and Belle. Dana's the second girl. A businessman arrived at his office and found that some very important documents had disappeared from his desk. Police suspect 3 people, Amy, Carla, and Mike. Each of them said, however, that they hadn't even been to the office. Who was lying? It was Mike. Both Amy and Carla are wearing high heels, while the dirty footprints on the floor were clearly left by sneakers. The king of a faraway kingdom was getting old and started to think of announcing his heir. He had 3 daughters, each with their own virtues, and the king couldn't decide which of them would be the best queen. Then one of his counselors suggested an idea. The king should give each of his daughters a teapot filled with water, and the daughter whose pot started to boil first would be proclaimed the heiress. When the day of decision came, the 3 princesses started boiling water. 2 of them really wanted to become the next queen, but in the end, the one that didn't want the throne won the competition. How did that happen? The 2 princesses who lost were a bit too eager. They constantly raised the lids of their pots to check if the water was boiling. And the third didn't care, so the water in her pot began boiling first. In the busiest street of a big city, there was a shoe cleaner who got lots of clients. He offered his services to everyone for free, but anybody who stopped and took his offer left him money before heading off again anyway. Why did they do that? He cleaned only one shoe for free, and if the client wanted their second shoe cleaned, they had to pay. Aaron was a poor teacher in a rural school. On the 13th of February, the day before St. Valentine's, he unexpectedly received a letter saying that his rich great-aunt had left him a huge inheritance. The next day, 3 of his colleagues, Sarah, Carrie, and Martha, sent him love letters. Can you tell who was genuinely in love with him and who was only pretending to take advantage of his newfound wealth? Carrie was the honest one. She's wearing a necklace with A and C engraved on it, which stands for Aaron and Carrie. Clearly, Aaron gave it to her as a gift because they'd been dating even before he got the inheritance. Jonathan spent several days in a hospital, although he never even entered the place through any doors. What's more, when he was released, he was perfectly healthy, but still had to be carried out of there. Why? Because Jonathan was a newborn baby. A village in the far north has found itself in big trouble. Someone has poisoned the lake, which was the only source of drinking water for the dwellers. When the police arrived to the place, all they saw was a set of weird prints on the snow. There were footprints between 2 parallel lines. They didn't know the name of the culprit, but they at least knew who they had to look for. Can you follow their logic? The police were looking for a person in a wheelchair and their helper. The wheels would leave those parallel lines, and the helper had to push the chair and would leave the footprints. Jack and his business partner decided to celebrate a very profitable contract they'd recently signed. They both loved hiking, so Jack suggested going to the Alps for a climbing trip. His partner gladly agreed, and Jack took it upon himself to arrange their little vacation. However, the trip went terribly wrong, and Jack's partner got lost in the mountains. Jack couldn't find him, and neither could the rescuers. But upon returning home, Jack was arrested after the police got a call from his travel agent. Why? The travel agent told the investigators that Jack only bought one return ticket for himself. For his partner, he bought a one-way ticket. Someone had broken into Mr. Jenkins' house and taken all his valuables while he was on vacation. His neighbor, Mr. Brown, called the police to tell them about it because he'd witnessed the event. He said he'd come back from work late and saw the lights were on in Mr. Jenkins' house. Mr. Brown knew his neighbor was away, so he carefully approached the window to look inside. The glass was frosted over, so he breathed on it to melt the ice and saw a man in a gray hoodie stuffing valuables into a blue backpack. Then Mr. Brown ran home and called the police. The officers listened to the story and immediately arrested Mr. Brown. Why? The dutiful neighbor had one detail wrong in his story. Windows become frosted over from inside. Then how could he have melted the frost with his breath from the outside? One rainy morning, Miss Riley left her house in a hurry and forgot some very important documents on her desk. She came back in an hour, but the document was gone. She gathered everyone who was in the house that day and questioned them. Ryan, the cook, said he'd been preparing dinner and didn't even set foot in Miss Riley's room. Sal, the janitor, said he'd only come in, turned on the lights to see if cleaning was needed, and left. Rose, the gardener, said she'd been busy watering the plants out. They reply 9, and he lets them pass. The next visitor is a guy to whom the guard says 6. He answers with 4, and the guard lets him through. Certain that she gets the principal, Jenny comes out of the shadow. The guard looks at her and says 110. Jenny replies 108, but the guard doesn't let her through. What's the correct answer? The answer's 90. If you write 11 in Roman characters, it'll look like this, XI. 9 is its mirror image, IX. Same with 6 and 4. With 110, it's CX, and 90 is XC. A man came to the police claiming that a very valuable briefcase was forcefully taken from him in the street. When an officer asked the man if he could describe the person who had done it, the man said he was wearing a full motorcycle outfit, leather pants, a thick leather jacket, and a helmet. The culprit tore the briefcase from the man's hands, hopped on his motorbike, and left. Still, the man noticed the criminal drop something and picked it up. Turned out it was his glasses. The man took them to the police as evidence. After a few more questions, the man was taken into custody for fraud. Why? If the culprit was wearing a helmet, then how could he have lost his glasses? A married couple were staying at a hotel. One night, they had an argument, and the man went out to cool off but forgot both his room key and his phone. When he returned, he saw an unconscious man lying on the floor next to his and his wife's room door. The police arrived and questioned them both. The wife told them she'd heard a knock on the door and thought it was her husband, so she opened it right away. Then the man pushed her, so she smacked him on the head with a candle holder and closed the door from inside. Still, the police took her into custody. Why? The woman thought it was her husband, but still approached the door with a candle holder in her hands. That means she wanted to hit him with it in the first place. Lights out.